Yeah, yeah. Yeah. Not here to make you happy, not here to make you sad. Your feelings are irrelevant when debates are to be had. The Belfast Babcast, loud and clear, covering the topics of the sphere, Working overtime to bring you many stories. Waking up today, the same labor and Tories. The stage, it isn't our part to play. Is bringing you knowledge in this way. No filter, no fuss, just tell unfiltered fact. Much like the words on those Christian tracks.
Okay, so this evening on the Belfast podcast, we are joined by a woman whose courage, quite frankly, humbles me. Gloria Masters is a survivor, an author, an advocate, and above all, a voice for countless others who cannot yet speak. Gloria's story is one of the darkest I have came across, and from the earliest years, she was subjected to a level of abuse that most of us cannot even begin to imagine. For 16 years, she endured a nightmare, trafficked, exploited, and betrayed by those who should have protected her most. She was forced into child SA by her own family, groomed by her grandmother, and sold into networks that reached beyond the walls of her home. And yet, despite what was done to her, Gloria has refused to let her life end in silence or shame. She escaped, she survived, and eventually she chose to step into the light. She began to tell the truth, her truth, and in doing so has given other survivors around the world permission to tell their story. Through her books, including On Angel's Wings, Flight Path to Healing, and Keeping Kids Safe, she has not only shared her own journey, but built practical tools for survivors and for families determined to protect their children. Through her foundation, Handling the Shame Back, through her podcast, and through her tireless campaigning, she has taken the weight and the stigma and placed it where it belongs, not on the survivors, but on the abusers and the power circles that protect them. So tonight we will talk about her life, her healing, and the wider system that allows this abuse to continue. This conversation will not be easy, so if there's any children, please don't have them watch this. It's not meant to be easy, but it is necessary, because to look away is to allow the silence to continue, and silence is where predators thrive. So Gloria is standing as living proof that even from the deepest suffering, light and strength can emerge. And it is my honour to welcome Gloria to the Belfast podcast. So thank you very much, Gloria, for joining us this evening.
My pleasure, and thank you for the invite.
Well, yes, it's obviously a pleasure. And I believe it is very early in the morning with you, nearly just 7 a.m. in New Zealand.
Just coming up to that, yes. But hey, we survivors are everywhere across the globe. It's really important that we reach as many people as possible to help support.
So I think it's very important today to obviously preach or approach this topic with the respect that is due. So more so than anything, I'm going to allow you to have the platform. Just going to ask questions and
sure.
Just really let you speak. So can you let us know your sort of earliest childhood memory, please?
Yes, so I think for me, the earliest childhood memory was one where the first rape occurred with my father. So I would have been 4.5 years old, and he had been sexualizing me and abusing me, but this was the first rape. So he took me out into the bush, and back in those days there was a lot more bush in rural areas in New Zealand, and proceeded to rape me. Now, the reality is, as a small child, I didn't really know what was happening. I know that I dissociated, and for survivors who watch this, the best definition I can give of dissociation is that the mind leaves the body the mind leaves because the body can't. And so to me, that happens. And it's a global experience for all survivors, frankly. But after that, my treat or my reward, if you like, was an ice cream. So my childhood was neglectful. I was abandoned many times over by my mother. I had no safe adult willing or able to protect me. So I was freely available to my father at all and any times, really, because my mother didn't care enough to take her job as parent seriously. Yeah.
So I've heard you say in previous interviews that your mum was what you would describe as a narcissist. So if you fit her narrative, all was well and good, but if you didn't, then you were an inconvenience. So
Yes.
can you describe what that was like and how that juxtaposed with the abuse that was going on?
Yes. Well, I actually, I've come up with this kind of saying, if you like, which is, to me, where neglect and abandonment live, abuse will always find a home. And I believe that, because if you've got a small child, which I was, who was continually being abused and, treated very badly, with another adult, the mother in the house, who was not interested in me in any way, shape, or form. In fact, the one thing I felt growing up, the common denominator for me, was I always felt I was in the way. And no small child should feel that. For parents watching or grandparents, well, children are such a gift.
Yeah.
And if a small child wants your attention, normally the people that love and protect that child think they're cute. And yes, they're exhausting, and yes, they're annoying, but they're also very, very loved and valued and treasured, which is what small children should be. But unfortunately, that wasn't the case for me. So I was always in the way, if you like. I was always a nuisance. And I learned quite quickly that if I could look after my mother or provide what she wanted, then I might get some positive attention. But frankly, growing up, I was more the parent than she was.
Yeah.
And yeah. So there was no room, there was no love for me there. There was no love.
It sounds like instead of love, it was replaced with conditioning on both sides. So you were conditioned with an ice cream when you got what you wanted, and your mother knew that if you didn't do what she wanted, then you knew that there would be a bad time ahead. So you tried to please her. So you're getting it from both sides here. And you said she wasn't present a lot of the time, which allowed your father to do what he was doing.
Yeah, well, and I think too, the thing is, obviously, these must have been very, very damaged people to even consider treating a beautiful child. Every child is beautiful, by the way, but to consider even treating a child in that manner is abhorrent. And when you throw into the mix that my grandmother, his mother, was paid a commission to train me into being the best child sex slave possible. And I know people get annoyed when I say that, but that's the best description I can come up with, because I was trained by her.
Well, I think you broke it seems like a very generational thing, the abuse. So it was very normal for your father and very normal for your grandmother. So you can only imagine it went on prior to your grandmother, if she's that normalized to be able to do this to her beautiful granddaughter. So it was something I was going to touch upon, and not to bring sympathy upon the abuser, but clearly it has to be something that they are at least accustomed to in some way, shape, or form, to enact it with such callousness,
Yeah, I think so. I think so. However, we are all adults, and I think when you are an adult, you know what you are doing.
Yeah, and
And
you
you
broke that
you
cycle.
make a choice. You make a choice, don't you? So
100%. And you know, by saying it was a generational thing, what I'm saying is, though, you broke that cycle of abuse
yes,
for the family, which is amazing.
yeah,
Because you have been able to take responsibility and realize that you are an adult and you are, you know, responsible for your adults, or responsible for your actions, irrespective of what you have experienced yourself.
that's
So
right.
getting more into the family side of things, and I appreciate this is a very sensitive subject to talk about, but you've been doing it on a global stage for quite some time. So I don't want to be seeming like I'm approaching this in a, you know, a headstrong manner. So if there's anything you're not comfortable with, just let me know,
Yeah, sure.
and we'll happily not we'll go along. But
Okay.
you said your grandmother was training you to be the best sex slave or sex worker that there could be. Um, Without getting too graphic, what did that look like?
Oh, so I would be locked into a room, and she would come up into the room behind me and would show me how to behave in a sexualized manner around men. So um, her grandson, my cousin, was someone that would be involved as well, which meant that I would have to practice on him. So what she would tell me to do, um, you know, with my body, with my mouth, with all parts of me, was to learn to entice, appease, seduce, you know, basically encourage this man to be part of what I was doing, so that you know, a sexual gratification was ensured. And I agree, going into detail doesn't help or serve this purpose. But the
No,
reality is, it's really just trying to show how ingrained into the family system this was, and how really I was nothing more than an object, because
modeling.
the more I could perform, or the more degrading acts I could do, the more money the pedophiles would pay. And so what that meant was that I had to do more and more uh, very abhorrent, disgusting acts, which uh, people consider nowadays as, oh, that's new, that would never have been around back in the day. Yes, it was. All the degrading things you can think of now that we hear about now, this has been around since time began. But I think for me as a small child, I was just very traumatized. I was scared. I was frightened. I didn't understand. I'm a small child. I didn't understand what was happening. And the trafficking, the formalized trafficking, first began from my grandmother's home when I was 6. Prior to that, my father would just have his friends around when my mother wasn't staying at the home, and they would abuse me and he would take money off them. But the formalized trafficking began when I was 6 years old.
Okay, so your father seemed to do this whenever your mother wasn't present, but like, having seen a lot of your material, I would imagine that your mother probably knew, but it wasn't convenient for her to address it. You know, it's like a sort of silent whatever, and he probably knew that she knew as well, and you know, and it's all just very seedy, and obviously because it was so normalized to you, because you were born into it, and you didn't know any different.
No.
How do you even begin to, like, you're obviously going to be in a constant state of fear, because any of those actions are going to put, no matter if you're born into it or not, put you into fear. But how did you, it was disassociation then? Is that what you done, or how did you cope at the time? Or
Well, yeah, I mean, because I was a child, a very small child when this all began, I was conditioned to think it was normal. Now, that doesn't mean, and survivors watching will understand this, this doesn't mean it ever felt right, or that I ever felt good about it, or that it was something that I ever wanted. It was just something that was normal and I had to do. The reality is, because it was just so much a part of my daily life, I was in survival mode. And when you're in survival mode, you adapt. So I became a very false child. I would always have to have a smile plastered on my face. I would always act as though everything was fine. And my personality was such that I was quite outgoing and fun-seeking anyway. But the reality is I learned to mask how I felt, because how I felt was never considered. And I would be slapped or worse if I showed fear or sadness or tiredness. Basically, I could never be me. So my biggest challenge, once I emerged at the age of 16, my biggest challenge was, who am I? Because I had no idea.
You essentially became a performing monkey, or whatever you want to call it. You learned to that it wasn't in your best interest to express your actual emotions, and just mask it with a smile or mask it with a joke or whatever. And
that's right.
Absolutely harrowing. Now, to get into more detail, your grandmother and your father both not only sold you off to friends, but also what would be considered societal elites. Can you describe what you remember from that? Not obviously naming names if you know them, but just like what sort of people were you getting handed off to?
Yeah, no, happy to. My father belonged to the Freemasons, and the Freemasons were very much infiltrated into the Catholic Church. So he was able to supply me to them. And I was not the only child by any means, but these men were very high-ranking throughout Auckland and throughout society. And the reality being that, I just want to make this very clear, if I could please. I'm not saying that every Freemason was a pedophile. I'm saying that at certain levels within the Freemasons, there were groups that were. And my father was catering to them. So there are some very good, amazing men out there who probably consider themselves to be Freemasons that wouldn't even be aware that this goes on. But I'm here to say, for the groups I would traffic to, these were our top lawyers, doctors, and in one case, politician that I was aware of. So the Freemasons would meet once a month and I would be taken there. But, and alongside that, I would also be trafficked from my grandmother's home, and I'm pretty sure that one of my abusers was Prime Minister of our country at the time, or very senior politician anyway, just because of the car that drove up, the flags on the car, and the fact that two men leapt out and did a scan of the house and the surrounds before
New Zealand would have like an international reputation of being like a very nice country and all the rest, which it is. But I'd be right in saying that there is quite a high level of debaucherous crimes over there that aren't really spoken about. There's quite a lot of child sexual abuse, quite a lot of domestic violence. There's a lot of suicide, but nobody thinks of that when they talk about New Zealand.
I think, to be fair, I think we're probably similar to Ireland in a way, in that we're a microcosm of what happens across the world. We're just like any other nation in the world. It's just we're much smaller, and we have a beautiful country. We have a beautiful country. But that doesn't mean that the human condition doesn't exist and that there is evil among us. Of course there is. That's the human nature, human conditioning. But I think what happens is we're very good at sweeping everything under the carpet. So you referred to suicide. Look, we led the world in suicide for years. We've got one of the highest rates of infanticide globally per head of capita, which means killing of babies. There are many dark aspects to this country, but because we're good at nothing to see here, sweeping it under the carpet, not discussing it, it continues. And when you combine that with a very toxic male culture, and let me describe that, not anti-men at all, men are amazing. What I'm talking about is the conditioning that men undergo, which means they can never speak out about feeling vulnerable, or actually I was sexually abused, or this went on for me, or I was scared, or I want to cry. Like there's no permission really. Culturally. I mean, we like to think it's changing, but my question is it?
I don't think so. I don't think so. I know I'm a 40-year-old man, as far as that is for me, but I'm obviously the generation where it's strange to talk about your feelings, or if you've been compromised or whatever. But I would say I find it quite easy to talk because I'm quite an open person, but I know that for 90% of males still, it is a barrier, because we are supposed to come across as strong and being able to deal with stuff, and the fact that something so compromising could happen to some agenda that's supposed to be so strong or whatever, it's all nonsense. I mean, we all feel the same sort of things, and we should just talk about them. But these are the sort of societal norms that are built into the psyche of men, and what we're believed to think. And certain parts of it are 100% correct. But no person should feel like they can't talk or can't share that they've been through a traumatizing situation, because that's only going to amplify it.
But I think, and I don't think it's just specific to New Zealand. You would agree, it's everywhere. But the reality is, for our men, we know that the stats are big with child sexual abuse, but for our men, it's almost impossible for them to speak about it, because they'll get responses like, "What, are you gay?" or "Why did you put up with it?" Or if it was a female offender, "Good on you, mate." Like there's this really toxic attitude entrenched.
So did you have any siblings that were
I'm unfortunately I've not really able to discuss because of legal situations. Yep.
So you were being trafficked.
I can talk about my brother though. I can talk about him.
Okay,
he was one of my main abusers. He became my father's mini-me when my parents separated when I was 11. I got left in the house with him and my brother, and he was one of my worst abusers. In fact, he made my life so miserable. I remember during the period of time I lived with them, I tried to take my own life 3 times. And people really don't like me saying that, but I'm being very transparent here. Yes, children do try and take their own lives. When you're desperate enough, you will do anything to end it.
Yeah, of course. I mean, if there doesn't appear to be any other way out, sometimes that does seem to be the only option. Now, the high profile people that you were being trafficked to, did you notice a pattern of people protecting each other amongst these people, like the clergy, business, politics, or institution? Or
I can't. I mean, I would say covertly. I didn't see anything overtly. I was just a child who was there to service and provide a service. So I was an object. If you can think about how narcissists and predators see a child they can abuse, we're objectified. So I'm not actually a child to them. I'm an object that can be used. So what I noticed though was there was always permission for them to do exactly what they wanted. So as I look back now, I realize, well, obviously there were massive cover-ups, or there were so many people complicit in this. You can't believe, as in generic, you can't believe that others weren't aware. And this brings me to another point. I firmly believe that the biggest group that concern me, believe it or not, are not the predators, they're not the pedophiles, they're actually the enablers. And the enablers are the ones that I consider who are the far bigger group, who aren't doing any abusing, but are aware that something's going on and then choose to do nothing.
Yeah. We have seen that all across the world with famous abusers and lots of people knowing that it's been going on, but it's not been convenient for their own career to say, or not be convenient for their own life. And how can protecting a child especially not be convenient? Do you know what I mean? That to me would indicate that the person has no spiritual awareness, because you stand by and do nothing, you're going to get it 10 times worse. You know, your convenience will not be paid off. Let's put it that way. But your protecting of the innocent certainly would. You know.
Well, and the reality is, people will say it's like in the P. Diddy. You would have heard the P. Diddy situation.
Yeah.
So I was called on to a podcast to discuss that, and there were men and women in the room who did not abuse children, but they sat there and they watched it. To me, they made a decision.
You're as bad as, if not worse, to be honest, because you're allowing it to continue. And not only that, you're also normalizing the behavior for the abuser.
Yeah.
You know, you're making them think it's fine. Whereas most people would be going, hold on here, what on earth's going on? But I mean, we're moving in very different circles there. You know, it's like what, obviously we sort of know the answer here, but why do you think authorities and media cover up so much for these things?
Well, because people are very self-obsessed. So people's initial response to anything is, what about me? What happens if I speak? What happens if I don't speak? Are there going to be consequences? So people are very, very self-absorbed, I think. And when it comes to protecting children, you know, it was Nelson Mandela that commented that a nation is best defined, or a nation's culture is best defined by the way they treat their children. And I think you would agree that across the world, children are not being treated the way they should be. They're seen as a commodity. This child sexual exploitation, including online, is rampant. There's lots of money being made out of it. There are people complicit through their silence. They may not be physically or sexually abusing children, but they're complicit because they do nothing. They see something and they say, don't they, that the greatest evil is committed by good men and women who choose to do nothing. That's evil.
True. So true. Because, you know, you may think you're compromising your job, your, you know, whatever, but you're compromising your soul if you're not speaking out. And I think that would be more important to me personally.
I agree. And I also think that children, I'm sorry if people find this offensive, but hello, children can't protect themselves. That's what we're for. It's what safe adults are for. We should be protecting children.
Yeah. And obviously in your situation, every adult who should have had your best interest at heart let you down and broke that trust and abused you.
Yes.
How How does that look as an adolescent? I mean, you're not going to be able to process that as a kid, as a toddler, but coming into your teenage years, how does that begin to resonate with you? Or how are you aware that that is the case, or is it something you just pushed down?
Yeah, I think because the conditioning was from such a young age, I just got used to it. However, because I had such a highly developed false self, I was fully aware that if I wanted any of my needs met, I would have to do it myself. So because I couldn't get it from within the family, there was no one who cared enough to look out for me. I then, of course, looked outside of myself and outside of my family. And that's where, you know, not good choices can be made. So I wasn't fully aware as in, how can they treat me like this? I was aware enough just to realize this doesn't feel okay. What's wrong with me? This is what children do. What's wrong with me that they can't love me enough? So a child or adolescent, we will always turn it back on ourselves. We must be lacking. We must be at fault because we're treated so badly or because we don't matter to anybody.
Were you going to public school as well?
Yes. Yes. So
you have a contrast, you know.
Oh, absolutely. And I think school was my savior. If I hadn't had school, I wouldn't be here today. I think it was an escape for me and a place where I was safe.
So you found the strength to escape at 16, is that right?
Yeah, and look, escape simply means that because my parents had separated, when I turned 16, I was told I could choose, you know, before I was 16, I'd been led to believe I could choose who I wanted to live with.
Okay.
So the day I turned 16, I chose never to see my father again, and I never did.
Well, it's understandably so, and I assume the same extended to your grandmother.
Yeah. Oh, no. These people were evil. These people were evil, and what they did and how they chose to treat me as a vulnerable child and teenager, you know, they've both passed away now. But you know, they won't be in a good place, I don't think, where they are now.
So. What about your other grandparents, your mother's side?
Not interested. So yeah, no.
Okay, so clearly that's where your mum learned her behaviours from.
Yep.
So
no one was ever interested in looking after me or looking out for me ever. In fact, as a child, when I would see my mother's parents, my maternal grandparents, my grandmother would turn away because I'd been made to go and kiss her cheek, but she would always turn away.
That's horrible, absolutely horrible.
Yeah, you know, again, there were my childhood was full of abandonment, rejection. I was so unwanted. If you know, if there was a case for people never having children, I'd like to nominate my parents. They should never have been parents.
I think the most amazing thing about your story is how candidly you're able to speak about it, and obviously that speaks to your level of healing, you know, from it. And I imagine that hasn't been an easy process. But what age were you when you first fully acknowledged that what happened to you was trafficking, and you know to the level of criminality that it was?
Look, I didn't realize I was being trafficked. I didn't understand what that was. It's only been in the last, you know, 3 years really that the term trafficking has been thrown around a lot more. And
Yeah.
of course I was trafficked because my father made so much money out of me. He bought and imported one of the first luxury American cars into New Zealand.
Pontiac or something, wasn't it? Pontiac.
Pontiac, yeah. And so, you know, there was a great deal of money being made out of me, and there were movies being made. It was the old-fashioned projector reels. I could hear the tick, tick, tick as they were filming. So we call that child sexual abuse materials now, but there were many of those made and sold.
We have touched upon like sentencing previously in these podcasts for abusers, and the sentence is ridiculous in comparison to like a financial crime or something that there's no victim involved. But you know, it seems to be like, no, you've just harmed the kid. There's 3 months suspended sentences.
It's appalling, because the reality is they're relying on the testimony of a child. And children, by their very nature, what are children conditioned to do? To do what an adult says, to behave in a certain way, to show respect, and to, you know, acquiesce or do what you're told. So it's very hard for a child to find the words, let alone take it further. And in terms of our judicial system, we know that statistically it's very, very hard for these cases to even get before a trial, but get before a judge. And then, of course, the burden of proof is always on the complainant. So it's just fraught with difficulty. And although we have great men and women in our police and judicial systems,
The system itself.
they have to operate within the construct or constraints of the law. So, yeah.
So, what age were you when you first spoke out publicly about your abuse?
Oh, I only 4 years ago.
Okay.
Yeah.
So, pretty early. So, how did your life look up until that point? I mean, was there a time before that where you admitted it to yourself?
Oh, yes. Yeah. Look, I had spoken to some trusted friends and done decades of work on myself, like through therapy and group work and journaling and lots of different modalities. In fact, one of the books I've written is around that journey to help other survivors with their healing, because it's a minefield. So, no, it took me till my late 50s before I could really talk about it without shame. And the reason I called the charity Handing the Shame Back is because that's what we do when we find our voices. We're handing the shame back, because it never belonged to us. So
your life is dictated by those actions until such times as well. You know, Did you have a lot of dissociative behaviors as well before you were able to come to terms with?
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, no, I was, because I was such a false person, it was to take me many decades before I could actually peel back the layers and discover who Gloria really was, because I'd never been allowed to be me for the first 16 years of my life. I wasn't allowed to be me. So can you imagine the depth of trauma or the impact of that? Your whole life is a lie. Your whole life is false.
Well, I think it's going to be very hard for anybody who's not experienced even a modicum of what you've experienced to understand. You know, it's very much in a field of its own. I've experienced bad times in life, yes, but certainly not that traumatic. You know, and it's only those who have experienced similar who can really speak to what you've experienced and understand. Like only begin to imagine. So
look, and I just want to say too, you know, I often get survivors all over the world reach out, because the podcast I do, which is also called Handing the Shame Back, shock horror, it's on YouTube, but it's also a podcast, is now in 125 countries.
Okay.
So that's the reach, because finding voices as a survivor of this type of trauma, finding your voice is so hard to do. And I just want to say to any survivor watching, don't feel you have to find your voice if you're not ready, because guess what? your voice will find you when it's ready. When it's your time, you'll know.
What was your catalyst for speaking?
Finding my voice. I kept getting the inner nudge, if you like, write your book, write the book, write the book. And I always knew one day I'd write a book. But I didn't want to because I'd been threatened by family members and manipulated for years to never speak. So that's why it took me so long in my life to do it. But I think the catalyst for me was realizing that I'd lost so many people and I'd lost so much in my life due to this trauma that it just became apparent to me that enough was enough, and that at some point I had to have my own back. And so I did. And I'd love to say to you, it's been easy. No, it hasn't. It's been hard. I've been called many, many things, evil, deluded, a liar. You had me till you mentioned satanic ritual abuse, all the things you can throw at anybody who finds their voice is what got thrown at me. But you know what? The bigger part of me knew there's people out there who are really suffering. There's children out there who are being abused daily. I've got to speak. And so that's what I do.
100%. And when you're watching somebody speak, if you've got discernment, you can tell whether they're talking lies or talking truth. And I mean, it's pretty clear what you're talking is truth.
Yeah.
And is there practices, people, or places that helped you get to where you've got to, or can you verbalize them? I'm sure obviously there's been many, but
I think practices, two things have helped me throughout my healing journey. One is meditation. If I meditate, my day is different. It's that simple. I'm only talking 10 minutes. So if I go within, shut out the rest of the world and just do 10 minutes, I feel different. The life feels better. The second thing is exercise. If I get out in the fresh air, if I go and do something physical, it releases the endorphins, but it actually helps me feel like I've achieved more as well. And it just makes me feel more uplifted. Because you've got to remember, I was trapped in a house for 16 years, pretty much. I was trapped.
Yeah.
I was a slave in a house for many years. It wasn't just the sexual abuse. But I think the other things that helped me was a good friend in particular who, whatever I said, she could handle. Whatever I wanted to express, she could hear, and with nothing but unconditional love and support.
that's right.
And then I think also journaling and writing, all those things helped me enormously. But I think at the end of the day, we don't find our voices due to fear, but when the urge to speak is stronger than the fear to not, it's your time. And that's what I would say.
So you have been an absolute force of nature since coming out. You find it hand in the shame back. Can you explain to our audience what the mission is and what it's providing for survivors that wasn't there for you?
Thank you. That's a really good question. The purpose of handing the shame back is twofold. One is prevention of child sexual abuse, which is why we have the global hand sign and associated responses to that. They're all free for anyone going on our website, handingtheshameback.org.
I'll link them all below.
Perfect. The other purpose is to support adult survivors of child sexual abuse like me who struggle to come to terms with what happened, who are not living their lives fully because they're still keeping the secret, who still feel shame or fear around it. So again, I've got lots and lots of resources which I provide every week on the website and on the channel Handing the Shame Back YouTube and through the podcast. Now, these are free because I believe that survivors have had enough. It's cost them enough in their lives without having to pay for that. So it's my honour to provide. And alongside that, I have the 3 books I've written. And this one here I'm going to show you is Keeping Kids Safe. And that's for safe parents, teachers and others to educate themselves on what children show us when they're being abused, what to do with that, and ways to help prevent it. So, yeah, lots and lots of resources there. And why me? Look, I feel, honestly, I don't know that I chose this. I feel I was chosen for this, which might sound odd, but...
No, not at all. I don't believe in life, as harsh as this may sound, that we're sent anything that we can't deal with, and as horrendous as a leap of mental thought that this may be, you know, this has equipped you to now help probably many thousands of people. Harrowing that you've had to endure that, obviously. But the impact that you have already had, and we know that the global hand sign has already impacted and saved lives. So how does that feel to you as a survivor?
Oh, I'm so humbled. I'm so pleased. We know children are using this across the world. We know in New Zealand because we get told. And I'm just so proud of the fact that I've got that. And the other thing with that is that, to be honest, had I known of that sign as a child, I would have used it and kept using it till someone saved me.
Yeah, and it's sad to hear, but a lot less sad now looking at you person to person and seeing the strength in you. You know, it's clear that you are beyond the term of victim, you're now survivor, and that's great to see. So why do you think society struggles so much to confront child sexual abuse when it's so
because we're not talking about puppies or flowers, are we? We're talking about the darkest kind of side of human nature, if you like, and it's evil and it's unpleasant. So good people turn away because they don't want to think about anything that isn't nice to think about. But unfortunately, what the silence does is allow the predators to continue.
Multiplies it. Yeah.
This is
sad. So sad. How do you think the power circles that are involved in this protect themselves from exposure in your experience?
I think I think they've got people that are, as I say, that are aware of what they're doing, that are too afraid to confront it or manage it. I think they get away with it because we have great encryption in terms of devices and firewalls. I think that people get away with it because they're so blasé about it. It's almost like if you see someone confidently walking through a building that shouldn't be there, the chances are you're not going to stop them. Yeah. If, however, you see someone who looks hesitant and they look a little bit furtive walking through a building, you'll probably stop them. So the difference being where we have people in positions of power or leadership who are confident, they're just going to carry on because no one's going to stop them.
Yeah, it's been going on for years. So what's going to change, I suppose, in their minds? Now, in your memoir, On Angel's Wings, you speak of grace. So where did faith enter your journey, and how has it impacted you?
Yeah, so look, I was brought up in the Catholic Church, which, no disrespect to people who attend the Catholic Church now, but I found the hypocrisy out of the park. I just couldn't deal with it because of what I went through. And so I'm not a religious person, but I am spiritual. And so angels were my go-to. And as a child and as a teenager, that's who I could turn to, were my angels. and
spirituality more so than
protection. Yeah, well, I could see the light, or I could feel them around me, and that helped me.
So, do you believe that forgiveness is possible in cases like yours? And if so,
Yeah,
what does it
yeah,
look like?
yeah. So it's interesting because I didn't forgive for the sake of the abusers, my family. I forgave for me,
Yeah,
actually. I decided that the weight was too heavy, so I chose to forgive. So I was free to move on in
yeah,
my
because
life.
you're carrying that burden, you know,
Yeah,
and
it's
that's the
like
reality.
a backpack of weight. Yes.
So, what one thing would you like every survivor to know and be aware of who has yet to come forward or yet to speak up or even maybe come to
I
terms?
just, yeah, look, survivors, I really just want them to know they're not alone. There are so many of us out there. It's not spoken about. And I think for the vast majority of survivors, we've been conditioned to never speak. So when a survivor finds their voice, they're not talking as an adult, they're talking as the child, the age they were when this began. That's the power of it. Because with the permission to never speak were usually threats, fear, violence, grooming, manipulation, in some cases gifts or rewards, which then made survivors feel they were complicit in this. And I'm here to say survivors were never complicit. As a child, you can't give consent to that which you don't understand. So that's that simple. Yeah.
So, what advice would you give to parents, teachers, and caregivers in general to how to spot abuse and signposting them where what to do when
Yeah.
actually?
Well, the first thing you'll notice is your child's behavior will change. So if you're a safe adult and a good enough parent, you'll notice your child will change. Their behavior will change because children can't hide how they feel. So watch for any behavior changes. Watch for how they behave around people. If you notice they're more clingy to you when someone's at your house or in the room, start to wonder, not with them, but start to be a bit more observant. I think things like giving them permission to write you a note about what's frightening them is good. We've got to remember children don't speak. That's an adult construct. Children show us through their behavior and how they interact, and that's why I adapted that.
So, leaving the horrific stuff aside, what is Gloria's life like outside of
Yes.
handing the shame back?
Oh,
Being a
great.
survivor? So,
Yeah, great. Like I'm a mum, I'm a grandmother. My partner's fun. We laugh a lot. We dance a lot. Going away on a trip soon. Like, yeah, life's great. Being a survivor is not just who I am. And I think
yeah,
that's a really, really good point. So to all survivors, there's so much more to you than what happened to you. It
yeah. Well,
does
that's
not
why
define
I
you.
wanted to bring that in because nobody in any stretch of the spectrum of life is any label. You know, we're all much more than one specific thing, and
Yeah,
especially survivors of trauma.
yeah.
That does not define you. And clearly, yourself, you've had a life outside of that long enough to have been able to have grandchildren, which is absolutely fantastic.
Yeah.
What age are the grandkids?
Oh, so one is 16 months and my daughter's having a baby in November. So very exciting times. Yeah.
I imagine you're a very protective mother and
Oh,
grandmother.
think helicopter hovering.
Yeah, yeah. I wouldn't like to mess with with your offspring. That's for sure. So,
Yeah, good on
um,
you. Good
look,
on you. Spread the word.
I appreciate so much you taking the time with us today, and sharing your story, Gloria, because it's important for people like this for everybody to hear stories like this because it is a reality. It's more of a reality than people would like to think. and, admit to. And I think us as non-victims have a bigger responsibility to, when we spot something, to either say something or do something.
Yes, please.
Yeah.
And I just want to also say, I am a charity. There is no funding for the work I do. I do it because I want to help humanity, and it's my purpose in life. If anyone feels they would like to donate to this charitable foundation, please do so. It's handingtheshameback.org. For those who wish to purchase books, which is how I make money, you can go through handingtheshameback.org as well, and there's a resource section in there. But what we've been able to do with keeping kids safe, the book I showed you, was we had a sponsor who bought a copy for every school in our country, and so New Zealand now has that in every school.
That's brilliant. And
yeah.
I'm going to link all your websites underneath so that people can get in touch with you if needs be as well, because outside of books and outside of the website, there could potentially be somebody out there today that you're, that's got the courage to speak up for the first time. So we'll put every possible link in that we can. So once again, thank you very much from Belfast, Gloria. It's been absolutely amazing having you on, and I thank you so much for sharing your story. And this has been the Belfast podcast. And if you could like, share, and subscribe.
Yeah. Not here to make you happy, not here to make you sad. Your feelings are irrelevant when debates are to be had. The Belfast podcast, loud and clear, covering the topics others fear, Working overtime to bring you many stories, waking up today the same labor and Tories. A stage, it isn't our part to play, is bringing you knowledge in this way. No filter, no fuss, just tell unfiltered fact, much like the words on those Christian tracks.